There are people who shine without even realizing it. They move through the world quietly, with no desire to stand in the spotlight, no intention of dazzling anyone. And yet wherever they go, something shifts, something awakens. It's not loud, it's not flashy, but it's undeniable. It's as if the air around them becomes a little lighter, as if something in the atmosphere changes simply because they're present. They don't know exactly what it is that sets them apart. They carry a feeling inside, a subtle, persistent knowing, that something within them is different, not better, not above anyone, just different. And they may never find the right words to explain it. They may never fully understand it themselves, but still, it's there. They are the ones who have faced the darkness, not once, but many times. And each time they've returned, they've brought back a little more light. And when that inner light begins to shine, it doesn't show up with fireworks. It appears in small, subtle gestures, in the kind of presence that gently shifts everything, in the comfort of a silent glance. Today, I'm going to share with you 5 signs that your light is something truly special, and the world is beginning to notice. Sign 1. People feel peaceful around you without knowing why. They're drawn to you even when you're not seeking attention. They open up, telling you things they've never said out loud before. They sit in silence with you and still feel understood. They can't explain it, but something about your presence soothes them. It's not that you have all the answers. It's that you've learned how to hold space without filling it with noise. Your light doesn't try to fix. It simply stays. It doesn't judge. It embraces. And in a world where almost no one truly listens, that becomes a healing force. You start noticing even strangers tell you their stories. Someone might say, "I don't know why, but with you, I can just be myself." And that's when you realize it's not about what you're doing. It's about who you're becoming. Sign 2. Your presence unsettles those who live inauthentically. You don't have to say anything at all. Just being there is enough. And yet some people begin to distance themselves. They become defensive, criticize you without reason, or simply vanish from your life without explanation. What's happening is that as your light becomes more visible, it begins to shine into other people's shadows. Your authenticity makes them uncomfortable because it reminds them of what they've been avoiding within themselves. Your calm disturbs those who live in chaos. Your honesty bothers those who built their identity on illusions. And even though this might hurt at first, over time, you realize it's not true rejection. It's a natural response from souls that aren't yet ready to face their own truth. This isn't about changing yourself to be more likable. This is about honoring your path and allowing life to naturally filter out the energies that no longer align with you. That discomfort you cause is not a mistake. It's undeniable proof that your light is working. It's not a flaw. It's confirmation that your light is doing its job. No effort, no words, no permission needed. There's a kind of discomfort that doesn't come from conflict. It comes from truth. It's that quiet tension that shows up when your mere presence begins to unravel the masks of others, even if you haven't said a word. You're not trying to accuse or confront anyone. It's just that your energy no longer matches what's built on falsehood. You've walked through so much pain. You've fallen, you've shattered, and you've rebuilt yourself from the inside out. Now, you can smell what's fake from miles away. And the most surprising part is, you don't have to call it out. Your authenticity already does that for you. You can tell when someone starts defending themselves without reason, when people compete with you though you're not competing with anyone, or when they just disappear from your life because being near you forces them to face what they've long ignored. And that hurts, especially when they're people you once loved deeply. But when your light begins to shine, life becomes precise. It starts removing those who can't walk with you in this new vibration. Your energy no longer supports connections based on fear, convenience, or emotional dependence. Your soul becomes more selective without effort because you no longer feel the need to belong where you once forced yourself to fit. And even if, at first, it feels like you're ending up alone, that solitude is actually the sacred space where true connections are made. So if your presence begins to make those who live through appearances uncomfortable, don't see it as punishment. It's a clear sign that your light is starting to work from the deepest place within, not to persuade, not to impress, but simply to exist. And the more you stay grounded in that light, the clearer it becomes how far you've come compared to what others still aren't ready to face. This isn't about spiritual arrogance, nor about feeling superior. It's about realizing that not everyone is prepared to resonate with you, because your light doesn't only illuminate the beauty, it also reveals what's hidden, unfinished, or unconscious. And for many, that is unbearable. The way you simply look at things, without judgment, but with depth, already triggers resistance in those who've built their identity from fear or from image. Your peace disrupts their defense mechanisms. Your honesty exposes dynamics that only worked because no one dared to name them. Your silence interrupts manipulation patterns that once went unnoticed. And now, your energy has become a mirror, not one that reflects perfection, but one that reveals authenticity and that makes people uneasy. Because when someone still lives identified with their wounds, they cannot bear the reflection of someone who has begun to heal. But this is exactly when something magical happens. When you dare not to shrink yourself. When you refuse to lower your frequency to be accepted. When you stop hiding your sensitivity just to avoid discomfort, something unexpected begins to unfold. You start attracting those who are also awakening. Those who see your light not as a threat, but as a signal. And that's when you realize that the initial discomfort was part of the process. It was the universe clearing the path, so you wouldn't have to carry bonds that would only weigh you down. Your light was never meant to please everyone. It was meant to touch souls, and that will always shake things, but it also transforms them. Because the truth is, you didn't come to this world to keep everyone comfortable. You didn't come into this world to keep everyone comfortable. You came to break cycles, to remember what is sacred, to plant a new vibration, even if at first it feels like you're walking alone. Every time your light makes others uncomfortable, it's fulfilling a greater purpose than you can imagine. Because even those who aren't ready to receive you, deep down, feel the echo of what you represent. They won't always admit it. Many will hide it behind rejection, distance, or criticism. But inside, your presence leaves behind a mark, an unanswered question, a seed. And the most beautiful part is, you don't have to do anything extra to create that effect. Just be. Just keep turning on your inner light, without explaining, without waiting for approval, without asking for permission. You've reached a point where your energy no longer needs validation from the outside because your guidance no longer lives out there, you carry it within. And every time you choose authenticity over acceptance, that inner guidance grows stronger. That doesn't mean you must become closed off or hardened. On the contrary, your light is also softness. It is compassion for those still asleep. It is patience for those who don't yet understand what you've already integrated. But above all, it is loyalty to yourself, to your essence, to the calling that becomes harder and harder to ignore. So keep shining, even when it disturbs others, because the ones who can't handle your light today may someday need it to find their own. And your light doesn't just change what's around you, it changes how you see. You begin to notice that certain conversations no longer feed your soul, that some family patterns now feel strange, like you're witnessing something that no longer belongs to you. It's hard to stay in places where the soul is dismissed, where everything is rushed or surface level, because without realizing it, you've started living from somewhere else. You no longer want to belong at any cost. Now you crave real connection, resonance, truth, and that internal shift shows up in every decision, every relationship, every silence you choose to keep. Someone who has lit their light can't dim it again without consequences. They can't lie to themselves without feeling it in the body, without sensing it in the soul. Because awakening isn't just awareness, it's an inner revolution that makes self-deception unbearable. At some point, betraying yourself hurts more than being alone. And that is another sign that your light is finally being recognized, even by you, because you begin to protect it, to honor it, to nurture it like a sacred flame. You know it's not pride, it's respect, it's gratitude for everything it took to get you here. Every fall, every dark night, every sacrifice prepared you for this moment, for this state of clarity, where, even if there are still wounds, you no longer define yourself by them. Where even if the world remains chaotic, you have found a point of inner calm that no one can take from you. Your light is special because it was forged in the midst of pain, and yet it did not turn bitter. On the contrary, it chose to shine. Your light doesn't shout, doesn't need to dominate. It is quiet, but steady. It's that presence that shifts the entire atmosphere without saying a word, that changes the mood of a room the moment you enter, that inspires trust in someone watching you, even if they can't explain why. And the most revealing part is that you are beginning to notice it too. Some people open up to you without knowing why. Others feel uneasy near you even though you've done nothing, and some simply avoid you. Not because something's wrong with you, but because your energy reveals truths many aren't ready to face. Your light confronts them without trying, with their own shadows, their need to perform, to please, to hide how they really feel. That's why it's not that you're strange, it's that you're too real for a world full of masks. And that authenticity, though it may hurt, is medicine, is mirror, is guide. The most valuable part of all this is that you're not trying to enlighten anyone. You're simply learning how not to dim who you are. And that, though it may seem small, is a revolutionary act. Because while others shrink themselves to fit in, you choose to expand, even if it means letting go of what's familiar, even if it means walking paths that most people are too afraid to explore. Because your light isn't looking for approval, it's looking for purpose. And that's the difference between shining out of need and shining from truth. Signal 3. The silence begins to speak to you. When your light is rare and starts to show, silence is no longer just the absence of noise, it becomes a language of depth. You begin to find meaning in moments that used to slip by unnoticed. A sunset, an old song, the way the wind stirs the trees, everything begins to carry a message you can't quite explain, but you deeply understand. You no longer seek noise to feel alive. Now you choose the spaces where you can actually hear yourself, where the mind turns down its volume and the spirit finally gets a voice. You discover yourself becoming more introspective, more selective, less reactive. It's not apathy, it's wisdom. Because once your inner light turns on, everything outside of you is filtered through something new, through the lens of authenticity, through the question of what truly nourishes you, not what merely distracts you. And in the middle of that silence you once feared, you now find answers you didn't even know you were waiting for. You begin to realize that you don't always need words to communicate, because your vibration says more than enough. Silence becomes your sanctuary, a space where you don't need to defend your truth or hide your sensitivity. It's in that quiet that your soul grows stronger, that your intuition begins to blossom, and without even noticing it, you start radiating a calmness that's contagious, a peace that doesn't come from the world, but from your connection to something greater. And what's most fascinating is that in that silence that once felt empty, you now feel held, as if an invisible presence is supporting you from within. You're no longer alone, even when you are. You no longer need explanations, because your heart is starting to trust something deeper than logic. You begin to notice your emotions settling more quickly, that you no longer react the way you used to, because you sense that everything follows a divine rhythm. There's a certainty forming in the unseen, a quiet feeling that you are being guided, even when you have no idea where you're going. And while the world keeps screaming outside, you choose the whisper of your soul. You realize you don't need more stimulation, but more connection. That clarity doesn't come from the outside, but from that sacred inner space that only reveals itself when everything goes still. That silence becomes your refuge, your gateway, and with time, you begin to understand that it's not just your mind calming down, it's your energy coming into alignment. And even though it can't be seen, it can be felt, it radiates, it's noticed, because your light, no longer distracted by what you're not, begins to shine upon what's always been inside you. And so, even in silence, you speak. Even without effort, you transform. Even without seeking, you begin to find. And that's when you realize you no longer need to prove anything, because the most powerful truths don't need to be imposed, they shine effortlessly. You don't have to convince anyone of your growth, your transformation, or your awakening. Your light starts to speak for you in every calm gesture, in each intentional decision, in every moment where you choose peace over the need to be right. It's a language with no words, yet its vibration is so pure that even those who can't explain it still feel it. The ones who stay in your life feel it, and so do the ones who leave. You also begin to attract different kinds of relationships, ones that feel more genuine, deeper, more aligned with the new frequency you're vibrating in. And it's not because you tried to change anyone else, but because you've transformed yourself. You turn down the noise of the world to turn up the volume of your own truth. Your silence becomes your power, your peace, your quiet rebellion. And that magnetism you now radiate has nothing to do with how you look or how hard you try. It's all about your soul, about the harmony between what you feel, what you think, and what you do. That's why, in this new chapter, you stop fearing solitude. In those moments, you can finally hear yourself. And in hearing yourself, you begin to meet who you really are. And meeting yourself changes everything. In that silent transformation, you slowly begin to see that even your wounds had a purpose. Not because they were fair, but because they pushed you back to yourself. They made you pause, look inward, and question everything you thought was solid. And in doing so, you awakened, not from drama, but from a fresh clarity that no longer begs for validation. Because when your light starts to bloom, you understand that nothing ever happened by accident. The way you used to shrink yourself to be liked, the guilt for feeling different, the ties that drained your energy, every bit of that had to happen so you could learn to choose yourself. To realize your energy isn't an endless supply that others get to take without asking. It's a sacred flame, a temple that deserves protection. So this light that people now see in you wasn't born from perfection, but from the alchemy of all you've lived through. It's not a gift reserved for a few. It's what happens when you stop fighting who you are and begin to embrace every part of yourself, even the broken ones. That radical self-acceptance, that inner peace that no longer depends on what's outside, that's what truly makes you shine. Because your light isn't some future promise. It's what happens when you walk through your own darkness and refuse to give up. And the more you accept that your light comes from within, the more you notice that you move differently through the world. Not because of your clothes or your voice or any effort to prove who you are, but because your presence no longer depends on anyone else's reflection. Your center is no longer up for negotiation. You no longer react to every conflict from emotional urgency, nor exhaust yourself trying to keep connections that no longer support your evolution. Now, you understand that not everything lost is truly a loss. You've come to see that not all pain is punishment. You've learned to tell the difference between what genuinely brings you peace and what only distracts you from your emptiness. And that quiet wisdom, that inner strength that lets you say no with confidence and yes with your whole soul, is a clear reflection of your light. A light that doesn't aim to outshine anyone, but simply to illuminate your own path. A light that no longer compares, no longer competes. Because once your soul begins to heal, it no longer needs outside approval. It starts to grow its own inner truth. You no longer chase after likes, shallow compliments, or promises of love that fall apart when tested. Your energy is no longer something you give away without thought. Your presence isn't something you beg others to see. Now, your light has become a beacon, discomforting to those trapped in unconsciousness, but magnetic to those searching for a way out. Your gaze grows deeper, your voice calmer. Your decisions now align with what you genuinely want to build. Even your body begins to respond in new ways. You fall ill less often because you've stopped betraying yourself. The lines in your face soften when you stop carrying burdens that were never yours, and your steps feel lighter when you stop needing to control everything. People begin to notice. They can't always explain what they see. Some ask if you're doing something new. Others drift away without a word. But you, from this new place of clarity, understand. Not everyone is ready for the version of you that no longer dims her light just to fit in. That's why, when your light begins to shine through, it's not because you're doing more. It's because you finally stopped forcing yourself. And that authenticity, that calm, is worth far more than any mask you've ever worn. Sign 4. The vibration that begins to guide your every step. There comes a moment, subtle, yet deeply transformative, when you stop making choices out of fear and instead begin to feel a kind of internal compass quietly pointing you where to go and where not to. It isn't rational logic. It's not a strategy. It's a vibration. And that vibration doesn't shout, it whispers. It only emerges when you're brave enough to be still, when you stop chasing what you thought you had to become and start truly listening to who you already are. At this point, the things you once thought mattered start losing their grip on you. The goals society imposed on you, the paths others laid out for you, the shoulds you inherited, the demands of the persona you crafted just to get by, all of that begins to dissolve. And it doesn't feel like loss. It feels like relief. Your energy no longer resonates with the same things. It can't stand what's fake. It rejects anything soulless. And it craves more and more experiences that actually make you feel truly alive. You no longer need logical reasons to take a step forward. You just know when it's time. You feel it when someone's energy doesn't align with yours, even if you can't explain why. You feel it when it's time to pause, even if the world tells you to keep going. And that feeling becomes your new compass. It's as if you're finally moving in rhythm with your soul, as if life isn't about going further anymore, but about walking more faithfully toward yourself. And the most beautiful part? This vibration can't be faked. It can't be copied. You won't find it in books. It only arrives when you stop betraying yourself, when you start choosing yourself, even if it means disappointing other people's expectations. Because at this stage, you choose peace over noise, integrity over image, and what's real over what's accepted. Your light no longer needs a stage. It shines on its own. And whoever sees it won't ever forget it. When that vibration begins to awaken inside you, something shifts at a level far beyond your conscious mind. You stop wondering which choice is the right one, because now it's your energy that answers. You no longer decide out of urgency or lack, but from a place far deeper and quieter, your inner frequency. You begin to clearly sense when something resonates with you and when it doesn't. You don't need long explanations. There's no need to justify why a place unsettles you, why a person exhausts you, or why a goal you once chased with passion now simply doesn't matter anymore. Your soul feels it. And that feeling, the one you used to silence for fear of being wrong, has become your most reliable truth. You no longer betray yourself to fit in, nor do you seek approval to move forward. The old anxiety of getting everything right or not disappointing others starts to dissolve, because now you see how high the cost of not listening to yourself really is. And so, without making loud declarations, you become more selective with people, with decisions, with the places you go, and with what you allow to enter your energetic space. Even your body starts to speak differently to you. You feel lighter in some spaces, more tense in others. You notice how certain conversations lift you, while others drain you completely. And you begin to follow this invisible map that guides you through sensations you once ignored. The vibration you now emit begins to attract different realities, people who align with your frequency, opportunities that flow effortlessly, synchronicities that make you smile, because you know they're not coincidence. They vibrate with who you are now. Even when it hurts, you accept it, because you understand your soul is evolving, and those who can't walk beside you now simply belonged to an older version of who you used to be. This new vibration teaches you to move without fear, not because doubts don't exist, but because you trust. You've begun to inhabit your soul so fully that any path that contradicts it becomes impossible to follow. Your intuition becomes your compass, your peace, your confirmation, and your authenticity, the new filter through which you choose everything. None of this can be forced. It only arrives when you stop denying your truth. And then, the life that once felt uncertain becomes mysteriously clear, not because you know what will happen, but because finally you know who you are. This is the expansion that begins when you no longer need anyone's permission. There comes a point on your journey when something inside you stops asking for permission to shine. It doesn't happen overnight, but it arrives with a silent strength that shifts everything. It's that subtle moment when you're no longer waiting for others to validate you in order to feel worthy, nor needing them to understand your path in order to trust that you're heading where you need to go. You stop seeking external approval, not because you no longer care. On the contrary, your sensitivity is still present, but it's no longer the compass guiding your steps. The need to fit in fades away, and in its place, a calm clarity emerges, an expansion from deep within that allows you to move freely, with presence and without guilt. You begin to speak with more truth. You don't shout. You don't impose. You don't explain yourself. You simply speak from what you feel. And though some may drift away, others will come closer. People who aren't threatened by your light, but inspired by it. You no longer need to belong to every circle, just those where you don't have to hide any part of who you are. You stop begging for love. You stop over-adjusting just to maintain connections. You stop dimming your energy to avoid making others uncomfortable, especially those who still don't dare to shine. Your energy begins to take up its natural space, and with it, your soul expands, unbound, fearless, and effortless, because now you understand. Your light is not a flaw to be concealed, but a gift meant to be shared. This expansion transforms your choices too. You no longer choose from a place of lack, but from a sense of inner fullness. You don't look for experiences to fill empty spaces. Instead, you nurture your life with what already resonates with your authenticity. The feeling is unmistakable. You're not patching up holes, you're inhabiting your internal abundance. The urgency fades too. You realize there's no need to chase what's meant for you. What's yours will find you, and you are ready to receive it, without anxiety, without sabotage, without masks. This stage feels like liberation, a quiet rebirth, where you finally see that there's nothing left to prove. Your worth isn't tied to what you do, or how others perceive you. Your worth is in your essence, and that is no longer up for debate. When you arrive at this place, the world loses its grip on you, and you begin to hold a new kind of power over your world, the power to create from your center, not your wound, the power to choose what aligns and release what no longer does. It's then that you truly understand what it means to live with your light fully on, because that light, which is yours, no longer waits for permission. It just wants to be lived. And when you reach this level of inner expansion, every part of your life starts to realign from a different place. You no longer define yourself by what you own or the roles you play, but by the depth with which you inhabit your existence. Your gaze becomes clearer, more honest. You're not trying to impress, to please, or to prove your worth, as if it was something others could grant you, because you've already claimed it, recognized it as your own. The decisions that once brought you anxiety now fall into place without drama. You can say no without guilt, and yes, without betraying yourself. You know how to walk away from spaces where growth is no longer possible, not out of hatred, but out of love for yourself. You don't react with violence, but you don't surrender either. You simply choose peace. And that choice, which once seemed selfish, has now become your sacred compass. Your connections shift too. Some quietly dissolve without blame. Others return stronger, deeper, because you no longer relate from a place of lack. You've stopped bargaining with your worth, and that changes the entire energy you radiate. You no longer attract from need, but from alignment. And yes, though you may sometimes feel more alone, it's not a sad loneliness, it's a full one, a powerful solitude, because now you know you have yourself. And that, for someone who once lived craving approval, is a kind of freedom no one can buy. Your creativity also awakens, not as a skill to display, but as a natural expression of your essence. You begin creating not for validation, but for the joy of creating itself. Your life force aligns, your thoughts become clearer, and your body responds with strength, presence, and fluidity. And yes, you begin to notice that everything flows, not because you found some magic formula, but because you let go of control. You released the urgency, the pressure, the harsh musts, and in that space, life began to meet you differently. Now everything moves with new rhythm, new flavor, new depth, because you no longer live from fear, but from expansion. When you stop forcing, not everything becomes perfect, but it does become more authentic and true to you. In a world full of appearances, that's self-love. If you felt these words spoke to your soul, don't ignore it. Your light is special and is beginning to shine. The world needs it. Leave me a comment if something resonated with you. I'd love to read it and accompany you in this awakening. Subscribe, activate the bell, and share this message with someone whose light is also beginning to shine. None of this is a coincidence. Your soul knows it. The most successful person I ever met once told me something that altered the course of my entire existence. Carl Jung said, "Your outer appearance is a direct reflection of your inner world, and if you cannot master what you see in the mirror each morning, you will never master your destiny." Those words didn't just reach my ears, they pierced through the layers of illusion I had built around myself. In that instant, I understood that I had been living in denial, pretending that the way I presented myself to the world had no connection to the state of my soul. Most people over 40 still cling to this same comforting illusion. That appearance doesn't matter, that it's something superficial, irrelevant, or even vain. But Jung's insight reveals something far deeper. He taught that the human being is a bridge between the inner and the outer, and both must coexist in harmony. So, let me ask you something uncomfortable. When was the last time you truly looked at yourself in the mirror and felt genuine admiration for the person staring back at you? When was the last time you saw not just a face, but a force of life, a being in full command of their essence? If your answer is a long time ago or never, then this message is for you. Because this is not merely about changing how you look, it's about transforming how you perceive yourself. Jung believed that the psyche constantly seeks wholeness, and that everything external in your life is a mirror of what's happening inside you. So, if your reflection no longer inspires you, it's a sign that your inner self has been neglected. After decades studying the human psyche and observing thousands of individuals from every corner of the world, Jung discovered a universal pattern. When the outer image is aligned with the inner truth, life begins to flow in balance. When there's coherence between what you feel and what you project, your existence stops being a battlefield and becomes a symphony. It's not vanity, it's alignment. It's the science of psychological resonance. I once met a woman who embodied this imbalance perfectly. On paper, she had everything: career, stability, a loving family, but her eyes carried a quiet fatigue. During a break at one of my conferences, she approached me and confessed, "I've achieved everything I wanted, but every morning I wake up feeling defeated. When I look in the mirror, I see someone who gave up. I told her something I now tell everyone. Your appearance is not an act of vanity. It's an act of responsibility. Responsibility toward your essence, your purpose, and the energy you transmit to the world. There's a deep psychological reason behind this. Every time you look in the mirror, your brain performs an unconscious comparison. It matches the physical image it sees with the mental image you hold of yourself. When both are aligned, your mind releases dopamine and serotonin, chemicals that fill you with energy, focus, and confidence. You feel capable, alive, and connected to your potential. But when there's dissonance, when you see a version of yourself that doesn't resonate with who you believe you are, your brain interprets it as an existential threat. It releases cortisol, the hormone of stress and defeat. And from that moment on, your energy drains, your creativity drops, and your emotional clarity begins to fade. That's why on days when you feel good about how you look, everything seems easier. The day flows, people respond differently, and opportunities seem to appear effortlessly. It's not magic, it's psychology. You are operating from a state of self-approval and inner order. Jung would say that in those moments, your persona, the image you show the world, is in harmony with yourself, the deepest center of your being. Now let's make one thing clear. Caring about your appearance doesn't mean falling into narcissism. It's not about vanity or superficiality. It's about cultivating a ritual of self-respect. Think of it as an act of love toward the vessel that carries your consciousness. If you owned a masterpiece, would you let it decay? If you possessed a rare musical instrument, would you leave it untuned? Of course not. You would care for it meticulously because you understand its worth. Your body, your image, your presence, they are instruments of your destiny. Through them, your soul expresses its frequency in the material world. When you neglect them, you silence a part of your own being. Most people after 40 treat their bodies worse than they treat their possessions, forgetting that this body is the sacred temple through which life experiences itself. I remember the moment I had to face this truth myself. I was 52, my professional life thriving, traveling the world, sharing my work. But one night, my wife showed me a picture of me taken during a lecture. I looked at it and felt a strange shock. Is that really me? I saw a man who looked exhausted, drained, disconnected from his own vitality. That image became a mirror of my neglect. And that night, I made a decision. I would no longer let my reflection contradict the greatness I carried within. From that day forward, I treated my appearance as an extension of my integrity, not out of ego, but out of coherence. Because if you speak about mastery, discipline, and purpose, your image must embody those same principles. When you wake up and approach your morning routine as a ritual of empowerment instead of obligation, everything changes. Each time you shower with awareness, dress with intention, and take care of your body with respect, you are sending a message to your subconscious. I matter. I am worthy. I am prepared to lead. That woman I mentioned earlier took that philosophy to heart. Within 6 months, she was unrecognizable, not because she became someone else, but because she finally became herself. Her energy shifted. Her eyes glowed with purpose. Her professional and personal life flourished. And when I asked her what had changed, she said something unforgettable. I finally decided to look like the woman I always felt I was inside. That is the secret Jung wanted us to grasp. Your appearance is not a mask. It's a mirror. It doesn't hide who you are. It reveals who you have chosen to become. When the external begins to mirror the internal, you enter a state of psychological wholeness. That's when your energy aligns, your path becomes clear, and the universe begins to conspire with you instead of against you. So, the next time you face the mirror, don't look for flaws. Look for truth. Ask yourself, is this image in front of me aligned with the person I am becoming? If the answer is no, then it's time to begin. Not with guilt, but with reverence. Because transformation begins in the smallest rituals of awareness. The first key is what I call the mirror principle. Every morning, before stepping into the world, look into your own eyes for 30 full seconds, not to judge yourself, but to connect. Ask yourself, is this person ready for the day ahead? Does what I see reflect my values, my inner strength, my highest vision of who I am becoming? If the answer is no, then do something about it. Adjust your posture, fix your hair, change your shirt. These may seem like small actions, but in the language of the psyche, they are powerful signals. They tell your unconscious mind that you care, that you are present, and that you are ready to embody who you truly are. Carl Jung believed that how you present yourself to the world is a mirror of your inner state. The outer form follows the inner essence. The second key, then, is what I call the 10-minute investment. Each day, dedicate exactly 10 more minutes to your physical presentation. Not 5, not 15. 10. Those 10 minutes might be the most transformative investment of your day. Use them to move your body, nurture your skin, or select your clothes with deliberate intention. The goal is not vanity, it is self-respect. Consistency, not perfection, reshapes your unconscious image of self-worth. Think about how much time you waste scrolling through meaningless content or answering trivial emails, far more than 10 minutes. Yet 10 minutes consciously devoted to yourself can alter how you feel for the next 24 hours. The third key is what I call the personal standard. Define exactly how you want to look and feel, and never let that standard fall. This is not about superficiality, but about alignment. If your standard is to always appear centered and grounded, maintain that standard even when nobody is watching, especially when nobody is watching. Because, as Jung said, your unconscious is always observing. When you honor your private standards, your self-esteem grows from within, in a way that no external praise can ever replicate. The fourth key is the 1% philosophy. Instead of chasing drastic, unsustainable transformations, improve your appearance or your energy by 1% each day. One day, it could mean experimenting with a new hairstyle. The next day, adding a small ritual of skincare or posture correction. These microscopic acts compound exponentially. Within a year, you won't just look different, you will feel reborn. The fifth and perhaps most powerful key is the multiplier effect. How you feel about yourself radiates outward. Your presence affects every person you encounter. When you walk into a room grounded, centered, and confident, people are drawn to you. They can feel your energy before you speak a single word. Jung often said that the psyche is contagious. Your inner harmony becomes a silent invitation for others to awaken theirs. When you cultivate self-respect through your appearance, you attract not only success, but connection, opportunity, and vitality. I've seen it countless times. Those who consciously embody their worth receive life with open hands. They don't chase validation, they magnetize it. This leads to an essential truth. Taking care of your appearance after 40 is not vanity, it is leadership. Each morning you step into the world presenting your best self. You give others silent permission to rise with you. Reflect for a moment on the people you most admire. How do they carry themselves? How do they move through the world? I assure you, they understand that outer expression is a reflection of inner mastery. Perhaps you think, but I'm not in my 20s anymore. My body has changed. And that's true. But maturity should not be an excuse for neglect. It should be a reason for refinement. At 40, 50, 60, your appearance can and should express wisdom, depth, and quiet confidence. You are not competing with youth. You are defining what powerful maturity looks like. When I turned 65, I made a promise to myself to become stronger, more alive, and more connected than ever before. Not to look younger, but to feel more conscious and awake. I began exercising with devotion, eating with mindfulness, and dressing with awareness. The results were far beyond physical. My creativity surged, my energy expanded, my work deepened. I was giving lectures with more presence, writing with more inspiration, and living with more gratitude than ever. Now, I want you to try something. Pause for a moment and go to the nearest mirror. Look into your own eyes and ask yourself, am I honoring the gift of this body, this life, this chance to do something extraordinary in the world? If your answer is yes, keep going. If it's no, then today, not tomorrow, not Monday, today is the perfect day to begin. Every day you delay caring for your appearance, you are postponing caring for your life. You are delaying your power, your confidence, your vibrancy. Have you ever realized that your appearance is not just the first impression you give others? It's the first impression you give yourself each morning. It is the first signal your mind receives about who you are and what you are capable of. Imagine how different your life would feel if every morning, when you saw yourself, you felt genuine pride and enthusiasm for the day ahead. That energy would flow into your conversations, your work, your relationships. This is not fantasy, it's psychology. The mind cannot distinguish between what is real and what it perceives as real. When you look good, your mind believes you are powerful, capable, and worthy of success. That belief shapes your actions, and your actions shape your destiny. Let me share a final technique that embodies this truth: the mental wardrobe. Each morning as you dress, do not just put on clothes. Put on the identity of the person you are becoming. If you seek to lead, dress as the leader within you. If you want to feel more creative, wear the colors and textures that express your inner artist. If you want confidence, choose every detail as if it were armor crafted for your spirit. Your clothing is not mere fabric, it is symbolic energy. It reminds your unconscious who you are and what you stand for. In Jungian terms, it is the ritual of individuation, the act of uniting your inner essence with your outer world. When the inner and outer self align, you no longer live by habit, you live by purpose. And from that place, everything in your life begins to reflect the beauty, discipline, and meaning that already live within you. Once, a man named Roberto came to see Carl Jung. His office was cluttered with unfinished projects. He had gained nearly 20 kilograms, and his overall appearance showed clear signs of neglect. Jung observed him carefully and said, "If you wish to rebuild your career, you must first rebuild your image. Your outer form must reflect the inner vision you hold for your future." Roberto decided to follow what Jung described as a personal rebirth ritual. For 30 days, he woke up 1 hour earlier than usual and devoted that time entirely to himself, not to work, not to others, but to his own body and mind. He began with light exercise, then a mindful shower, followed by the intentional selection of his clothing and complete personal care. In just a month, Roberto had lost 8 kilograms, but more than that, he had closed 2 major business deals that had been stalled for months, and even entered a new romantic relationship. His improved appearance had reignited his confidence, and that confidence had reignited his entire life. This is what Jung called the reflection of the psyche in the physical world. He believed that how we present ourselves is never superficial, it is symbolic. The body becomes a mirror of the soul. It expresses our inner order or our inner chaos. When you align your outer image with your inner vision, you create psychological coherence. And coherence always attracts transformation. Now imagine if you started tomorrow to apply what you are learning here. Imagine if you decided that your physical appearance would become a living symbol of your highest self. Let me share a practical tool inspired by Jung's method of self-observation. I call it the 5-minute mirror audit. Tonight, before going to bed, stand in front of the mirror and ask yourself 5 questions. Does my current appearance reflect who I truly wish to become? What 3 things can I improve immediately? What self-care habit have I been avoiding? How would I feel if I saw someone who looked exactly like me walk into a meeting? What message am I silently sending to the world through my appearance? Be brutally honest with your answers. Jung believed that true transformation begins only when we face our own truth, without masks. Then, choose one specific action you can take tomorrow to enhance your appearance. Something small, yet intentional. It could be as simple as pressing your shirt with greater care, or as meaningful as booking an appointment with a stylist. What matters is that it's concrete and achievable, because lasting change is not built from grand gestures, but from small, consistent acts repeated over time. Let me tell you about another case. A woman named Elena, 52 years old, attended one of Jung's lectures in Madrid. She had worked in marketing for 20 years, but after a company restructuring, she lost both her job and her self-esteem. When she met Jung, she said, "I feel invisible. When I walk down the street, no one notices me. In job interviews, I feel like I project no authority." Jung replied softly, "Invisibility is not a matter of age. It is a matter of presence. And presence begins with how you show yourself to the world." Elena began with subtle changes. She straightened her posture, shoulders back, head high. She updated her wardrobe with clothes that truly fit her form. She adopted a simple yet steady exercise routine and paid attention to her hair and makeup. 6 months later, Elena not only had a better job than before, she had started her own marketing consultancy. Her physical transformation had triggered a complete inner rebirth. The lesson is profound. When you change how you appear, you change how the world perceives you. But more importantly, you change how you perceive yourself. Your appearance is your silent language, your personal symbol. Before you speak a single word, your image already communicates your self-worth, your discipline, your values, and your intentions. Ask yourself, are you communicating excellence or neglect, confidence or doubt? Does your presence say, "This person is in control of their life," or "This person has lost direction"? These are uncomfortable questions, but they are necessary. Until you confront the reality of the image you project, you cannot transform it. And perhaps you're thinking right now, this all sounds too superficial. Shouldn't people judge me by my character, not my looks? Ideally, yes. But Jung would remind us, we do not live in the ideal world. We live in the symbolic one. In the real world, people form impressions within the first 7 seconds of meeting you. In those seconds, your appearance speaks louder than your words. This is not about fairness. It's about awareness. You can either become a victim of perception or learn to use perception as a tool of empowerment. Caring for your appearance is not vanity. It is self-respect. It is a declaration of personal discipline and alignment between your inner values and your external image. Each morning that you invest time in presenting yourself with care, you are sending a message to your subconscious. I am worth it. My life matters. My dreams are valuable. When that message is repeated every day, it stops being an affirmation and becomes a belief. And that belief eventually becomes your reality. That is the alchemy of transformation that Carl Jung taught. When the inner and outer worlds meet in harmony, the self is reborn. Allow me to share another powerful tool with you, one that aligns deeply with the teachings of Carl Jung. I call it the ritual of the 3 mirrors. Every day, look into 3 different mirrors. The first mirror is literal, the physical mirror where you examine your outer appearance. The second mirror is the emotional one, where you ask yourself, how do I feel about myself today? Does my external appearance reflect my ideal emotional state? The third mirror is the aspirational mirror, where you question, does the way I present myself today bring me closer to the person I wish to become? Or does it pull me away from that vision? This practice helps you develop a multidimensional awareness of your self-image and the subtle ways it influences your destiny. Have you ever noticed how the most successful people always seem to have their appearance perfectly aligned? It's no coincidence. They've understood what Jung often suggested, that what is external is only a mirror of what lies within. Excellence in one area of life tends to expand into every other. When you cultivate the habit of excellence in your appearance, that same discipline begins to flow naturally into your work, your relationships, your health, and even your finances. It's what I call the domino effect of inner order, manifesting outward perfection. Let me be specific about what Jung might describe as a healthy attachment to your image after the age of 40. It means that every single day, without exception, you dedicate intentional time to present yourself in the best possible way, not out of vanity, but out of self-respect, not for approval, but as an act of inner alignment. It means your wardrobe should reflect who you are becoming, not who you used to be. Your exercise routine should not be punishment, but a ritual of vitality and strength. Your self-care is not an expense. It's a sacred investment in your future self. It's the understanding that your appearance is not merely aesthetic, it's symbolic. It's a psychological language that communicates your level of self-respect, consciousness, and inner harmony. Do you remember the story I told at the beginning of this message? The idea that your outer appearance reflects your inner world. Years later, I understood that this was not about superficial vanity at all. It was about personal integrity. Integrity means that every part of your life resonates in harmony. If you speak of excellence, but your image reflects neglect, there's a fracture between the inner and the outer. If you talk about discipline, but cannot discipline yourself to maintain your personal image, there's an inconsistency in your psyche. Jung taught that the true self seeks unity, a state where thought, emotion, and action are aligned. Your appearance must therefore be consistent with your values, your ambitions, and the message you wish to send to the world. Now let's explore something that can completely shift your perception. What I call the spiral effect of self-image. It can move upward or downward. The choice is yours. When you care for yourself, you feel better. When you feel better, you act better. When you act better, you produce better results. And when you achieve better results, you naturally take even better care of yourself. That is the upward spiral of consciousness, a force that accelerates your growth over time. But the opposite is also true. When you neglect yourself, you begin to feel worse. When you feel worse, your actions deteriorate. When your actions decline, your results suffer. And when your results fall, your self-neglect deepens. That is the downward spiral, a slow disconnection from your authentic self. So the question is, which spiral are you currently feeding? And more importantly, what will you do today to ensure it becomes an ascending one? Let me offer you 3 precise actions to begin your upward spiral today. Action number 1. Remove one piece of clothing from your wardrobe that no longer serves who you are becoming. It could be something that doesn't fit, that's worn out, or simply doesn't reflect your current identity. Donate it or throw it away today. This symbolic act tells your subconscious, I am releasing the past to make space for a better version of myself. Action number 2. Add 15 extra minutes to your morning routine for the next week. Not to sleep longer, but to invest in your appearance, in your presence, in the image that mirrors your evolving consciousness. This is not about perfection. It's about alignment. The visible harmony between your inner state and the person you are becoming. Use them to exercise, to choose your clothes with more awareness, to take care of your skin, to pay attention to any aspect of your appearance you may have neglected. Action number 3. Take a full-body photo of yourself today and keep it, not to criticize yourself, but as a point of reference. In 90 days, after consistently applying these principles, take another picture in the same place. The difference will surprise you. These actions might seem small, but they form the foundation upon which you will build a complete transformation. Before we end, I want to share a story. It's about a man named Jose, 58 years old, who had been a bank manager for most of his career. He came to see me because despite his experience and competence, he had been passed over for a promotion 3 consecutive times. During our conversation, Jose admitted that he had stopped caring about his appearance years ago. At my age, it doesn't matter how I look, he said. What matters is my work. I explained to him that this mindset was silently sabotaging his growth. Carl Jung taught that what we neglect in the outer world reflects an inner neglect. Jose's unkempt appearance was sending a subconscious message. This person has lost ambition. This person has stopped evolving. Jung would have said that Jose's outer image had become a mirror of his inner resignation. Jose decided to change. He began what I now call the senior professional protocol. He updated his wardrobe with the help of a style consultant. He began an exercise program suited to his age. He started paying attention to details he had ignored for years: his posture, his walk, even how he sat in meetings. The transformation was remarkable. Not only did he receive the long-awaited promotion, but he also became a mentor to younger executives who admired his confidence and presence. The lesson here is profound. It is never too late to decide to present your best self to the world. You are never too old to care about your appearance. You have never lost so much time that it isn't worth starting today. After 40, your appearance should communicate wisdom, experience, stability, and confidence. It should say, "This person has learned what works in life and is applying it." Write this thought down right now. My appearance is an investment in my future, not an expense in my present. Read it out loud. Feel it, because this mindset will change everything for you. Imagine how your life would be if you woke up every day feeling completely satisfied with how you look. If every time someone saw you, they instantly thought, "This person has their life in order." That's not a fantasy. It's entirely attainable. It requires decision, consistency, and the understanding that caring for your appearance is caring for your destiny. Practice it this week. Don't wait until everything is perfect. Don't wait to lose weight, to have more money, or to feel more motivated. Start where you are, with what you have, because your life is happening now. Every day you postpone. Presenting your best self is a day lost. Every morning you settle for less than your best appearance is a morning when you undervalue your potential. Your appearance is not vanity. It's strategy. It's applied psychology. It's personal leadership. It's a declaration to the world that you take your life and your goals seriously. Reflect on this for a moment. What opportunities have you missed because your appearance didn't match your competence? What relationships could have grown stronger if you had projected more confidence? What version of yourself have you been hiding behind a neglected exterior? The time to act is not tomorrow, not when you feel ready. It's now, because motivation comes after action, not before. Remember, as Carl Jung taught, the external world mirrors the internal one. You cannot embody inner excellence while neglecting your outer form. You cannot preach discipline and appear undisciplined. You cannot speak of transformation and remain unchanged in the way you present yourself. If this message has inspired you to take control of your appearance, and therefore your life, I want you to do something for me. Subscribe to this channel and activate the notification bell so you continue receiving the tools and strategies you need to reach your highest potential. But more importantly, act today. Don't let this be just another video you watched. Let it be the turning point that changes how you look, how you feel, and how you live. You are one decision away from transforming your life completely. The decision to honor your potential through your appearance. The decision to show up as your best self every day. The decision to understand that taking care of your image is not superficiality, it's responsibility. Decide now. Act today. Your future self will thank you forever. And when you look back a year from now, you'll remember this very moment as the point where you stopped underestimating yourself and began presenting to the world the extraordinary person you truly are. Your time is now. Have you ever felt like there's a part of you working against your own dreams, goals, or even your relationships? That internal conflict, that invisible hand pulling you backward just as you're trying to move forward. It's not your imagination. It's a profound psychological phenomenon that quietly influences our lives in ways we often don't understand. According to Carl Jung, this mysterious force has its roots in a hidden part of our psyche he called the shadow. In this video, we'll dive deep into what the shadow really is, how it's intimately connected to self-sabotage, and most importantly, how embracing it can lead to genuine freedom and inner transformation. Jung described the shadow as a repository, a place within us where we store everything we repress, reject, or refuse to acknowledge about ourselves. These are traits, impulses, desires, and fears that we push out of our conscious awareness because they conflict with the ideal image we try to present to the world. But here's the paradox. What we repress doesn't vanish. It doesn't disappear into the void. It hides in the unconscious, subtly shaping our thoughts, reactions, relationships, and decisions, often to our own detriment. To truly understand the shadow, we must first accept a difficult truth. We are not as self-aware as we like to believe. Our identity isn't a fixed, singular self. Jung believed the human psyche is layered, composed of the conscious ego, the personal unconscious, and the collective unconscious. The shadow resides within the personal unconscious and contains everything we find unacceptable, shameful, or threatening. Not only negative qualities like jealousy, rage, or arrogance, but also positive traits like ambition, confidence, or assertiveness, if those qualities were deemed wrong in our upbringing. Imagine someone raised in an environment where humility was excessively praised. Over time, that person might learn to associate ambition with selfishness or pride. As a result, they repress their drive to succeed, burying it deep in the shadow. Yet that buried ambition doesn't vanish. It lingers beneath the surface and often returns in the form of self-sabotage, quiet, persistent actions that prevent success or undermine progress. This is where the connection between the shadow and self-sabotage becomes clear. When we avoid confronting our shadow, it doesn't go away. It gains power. It's like carrying an invisible backpack filled with unmet needs, denied emotions, and repressed fears. Without realizing it, we act from this weight. For instance, someone who fears failure but refuses to acknowledge that fear might unconsciously procrastinate, make excuses, or abandon their goals just before success is within reach, ensuring they never have to face that fear directly. Our relationships also reflect the shadow's influence. Jung observed that we often project our shadow onto others. That means we see in others the qualities we refuse to see in ourselves. You might harshly criticize someone for being selfish, not realizing that you too have selfish tendencies you've refused to accept. These projections distort how we see others and lead to unnecessary conflict, often creating emotional distance between us and the people we care about. The first step in breaking free from self-sabotage is to bring the shadow into the light. This is no easy task. It requires a kind of honesty most people avoid their whole lives. Jung emphasized that shadow work demands courage, a willingness to face the parts of ourselves we've spent years avoiding. Some powerful questions to begin uncovering your shadow include: what qualities do I most often criticize in others? Which parts of my personality do I feel ashamed of or uncomfortable with? What emotions or situations do I instinctively avoid? Reflecting on these questions can reveal hidden patterns of self-sabotage. For example, you may find you constantly put yourself down, never feeling good enough. Upon deeper reflection, you might discover there's a part of you that actually fears success because, at a core level, you believe you don't deserve it. This belief doesn't live in your rational mind. It lives in your shadow, and until you confront it, it will keep showing up. Jung didn't believe the shadow should be destroyed. Instead, he taught that the shadow must be integrated, accepted as a part of who you are. Integration doesn't mean acting out your impulses or indulging your worst traits. It means recognizing their existence and learning from them. When you embrace your shadow, the energy you once used to suppress it becomes available for creative, conscious action. The integration process happens in stages. First, awareness, the realization that the shadow exists and has been influencing your life. Second, observation, the practice of noticing your emotions, thoughts, and behaviors without judgment. Third, acceptance, understanding that these traits are part of you and not inherently bad or shameful. Finally, transformation, using this awareness to make better choices, ones that align with your authentic self rather than your fear-driven ego. Jung also saw dreams as one of the most direct pathways to the shadow. He believed that through symbols, archetypes, and strange narratives, dreams reveal aspects of ourselves we're blind to during waking life. Keeping a dream journal can be a powerful tool for shadow work. For instance, if you frequently dream about being lost in a dark forest, that could represent feelings of confusion or alienation caused by repressed parts of your psyche. Interpreting these dream symbols can help you identify what your conscious mind refuses to face. The shadow doesn't just affect your inner world, it influences your decisions, often in destructive ways. When you're unaware of its presence, it operates like a hidden script, directing your actions from behind the scenes. You might repeatedly choose romantic partners who mistreat or manipulate you and wonder why the same painful patterns keep happening. But from a Jungian perspective, those patterns may be your shadow's attempt to bring unresolved wounds, like fear of abandonment or low self-worth, into your awareness. Painful, yes, but also necessary, because until you recognize the shadow, it will continue repeating these lessons, louder and more intensely each time. One of Jung's most powerful insights was that what we refuse to face within ourselves inevitably shows up in the people around us. When we repress certain traits, we begin to see them everywhere. You might find yourself annoyed by someone who seeks attention, not realizing that you've buried your own need for validation because you were taught it was wrong. This projection becomes a kind of trap, keeping you focused on the flaws of others while ignoring your own internal disconnection. To overcome self-sabotage, you must dismantle these projections. This means asking difficult questions. What exactly bothers me about this person? Could that be a reflection of something I haven't accepted in myself? These are not comfortable questions, and the ego, the conscious self that wants to maintain a consistent identity, will resist them. But they are necessary for deep healing and self-knowledge. Jung described the ego as the part of the psyche that creates a stable sense of self. It's the mask we wear to function in society. While necessary, the ego also fears change. It seeks safety in routine and consistency, even if that consistency is painful. Self-sabotage occurs when the ego feels threatened by your growth. You may consciously want success, but if your ego associates success with rejection, exposure, or failure, it will do everything it can to stop you, often in subtle and unconscious ways. The ego also helps suppress the shadow, because acknowledging the shadow would mean rewriting the story the ego tells about who you are. This is why shadow work can feel so destabilizing, but it's also why it's transformative. To stop sabotaging your life, you must allow the shadow to emerge, to challenge the ego's narrative, and replace it with a more complete and honest understanding of yourself. Jung called this lifelong journey of inner integration individuation. It is the process of becoming whole, of embracing every part of your psyche, not just the light, but also the darkness. Individuation is not about becoming perfect, it's about becoming real. It's about living in alignment with your full truth instead of constantly hiding, pretending, or overcompensating. This process dissolves self-sabotage at the root because it replaces fear with authenticity. Individuation demands introspection, self-inquiry, and a willingness to let go of illusions. You begin to see beyond the masks you wear and embrace the duality within, the light and the shadow, the creator and the destroyer, the confident and the insecure. It means making choices that align with your deeper self, even when they're uncomfortable or unfamiliar. Although the path is challenging, there are practical tools to support this work. Journaling is one of the most accessible. Use writing to explore your inner landscape. Ask yourself, what are my deepest fears? What situations make me feel powerless? How do I react to criticism? And what does that reveal about me? These reflections open the door to awareness. Another essential tool is therapy, especially Jungian analysis or other depth-oriented modalities. A trained therapist can help you navigate the complexities of your shadow, guiding you with compassion and insight as you face the aspects of yourself that feel difficult or unacceptable. Jung encouraged working with a therapist who could help uncover unconscious patterns and projections. This process can be profoundly transformative, as it allows one to unravel the roots of self-sabotage and build a healthier relationship with oneself. Dream work, as mentioned before, serves as a gateway to the unconscious. Recording and reflecting on your dreams can reveal hidden aspects of your shadow and assist in integrating them. Meditation and visualization are practices that help you connect with your inner world and observe your thoughts without judgment. One effective technique involves visualizing your shadow as an external figure and engaging it in dialogue, asking what it needs from you. Creative expression, whether through art, music, writing, or any other form, becomes a powerful tool for exploring and releasing the shadow's energy. The benefit of integrating the shadow is that once acknowledged, it releases an immense amount of energy that was previously locked in repression and inner conflict. This reduces self-sabotage and allows you to live with greater authenticity, creativity, and confidence. Jung stated that when the shadow is integrated, it becomes a source of strength and insight. Rather than fearing your flaws or weaknesses, you begin to view them as opportunities for transformation and inner growth. Ultimately, overcoming self-sabotage doesn't mean eliminating your problems. It means changing how you relate to them. By accepting and working with your shadow, you become the architect of your life, rather than a passive observer. Shadow integration not only helps us overcome self-sabotage, but also leads us to unlock a hidden inner power. Jung believed that confronting and embracing the shadow releases energy that can be transformed into creativity, intuition, and deep wisdom. However, this path is not without its challenges, as it requires facing parts of ourselves that we've long avoided. The shadow often reveals itself most clearly in our personal relationships. Jung pointed out that projecting the shadow onto others is one of the main causes of conflict. When we project repressed parts of ourselves, we create dynamics that reinforce our suffering and self-sabotage. Instead of recognizing these projections, we reject the mirror others present to us, and this prolongs the tension. Integrating the shadow in relationships means taking ownership of our projections. This demands a level of honesty that may feel uncomfortable, but it's essential for building authentic and meaningful connections. Some helpful questions to explore these projections include: what traits in others evoke discomfort or rejection? How might these traits reflect something in me I haven't accepted? What is this relationship teaching me about my shadow? When you begin to see others as mirrors of your inner world, relationship dynamics begin to shift. You stop blaming others and start taking responsibility for your emotions and reactions. The impact of the shadow also extends to our ambitions and dreams. Self-sabotage affects not just relationships, but also our ability to realize goals. The shadow often shows up as fear of success, procrastination, or harsh self-criticism, ways we unconsciously protect ourselves from what we perceive as threatening. Although we may consciously desire achievement, the shadow may hold a deep-rooted fear of not being worthy or capable, blocking action and motivation. Jung suggested that the only way to overcome these internal obstacles is to confront fear directly. This means identifying the hidden beliefs that fuel self-sabotage and questioning them. What stories do I tell myself about my worth or abilities? How might I be using self-sabotage as a defense mechanism? Once these beliefs are uncovered, they can begin to shift. This doesn't mean ignoring fear, but rather engaging with it compassionately and curiously. Jung spoke of finding gold in the shadow, a metaphor for the positive potential hidden in our repressed aspects. While the shadow is often associated with darkness, it also contains gifts, talents, and qualities we've buried because they didn't align with our conscious identity. For example, someone who suppressed their creativity because it was deemed impractical may discover powerful artistic abilities when reconnecting with their shadow. Another person may find hidden strength in their ability to set boundaries or express assertiveness, even if those traits once felt unacceptable. To uncover the gold in your shadow, reflect on the parts of yourself you've rejected or dismissed. Ask yourself, what parts of me have I hidden out of fear of judgment or disapproval? What talents or desires have I neglected because they didn't seem useful or acceptable? How can I start bringing these qualities into my life constructively? This kind of exploration liberates you from the cycle of self-sabotage and unlocks a higher level of personal potential. The shadow also plays a role in spirituality, the process of transformation. Jung saw shadow work not just as psychological, but also as a spiritual journey. Integrating the shadow is a way to return to wholeness, to unify our internal polarities and live more authentically. From this lens, self-sabotage isn't a problem to eliminate, but an invitation to explore our depths and reconnect with our essence. Jung once said, "There is no awakening of consciousness without pain." People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. Enlightenment doesn't come from imagining light, but from making darkness conscious. The path to illumination requires confronting what we avoid. Instead of running from fear or imperfection, we must face them directly and understand what they're asking of us. Cultivating self-acceptance is key, recognizing that we are complex beings made of both light and shadow, and that it's okay to be imperfect. Seeking balance is not about acting on every repressed impulse, but about acknowledging and integrating all aspects of who we are. It's about creating inner harmony. Transforming self-sabotage into self-leadership involves more than resolving inner conflict. It's about becoming the conscious guide of your own life. When we stop fleeing from our shadows, we gain the clarity and confidence to make choices aligned with our authentic self. A crucial step in this process is redefining success and failure. When success is no longer about meeting external standards, but about inner alignment, The fear of failing begins to lose its power. The shadow no longer needs to protect you from imagined threats. Instead, you begin to see challenges as invitations to evolve, and failure, rather than something to fear, becomes a valuable teacher. The shift from self-sabotage to self-leadership is a process of reclaiming your personal power. The energy once trapped in suppression now becomes available for creation, purpose, and conscious action. You begin to write your own story, not by denying your wounds, but by allowing them to become your source of strength. By acknowledging, accepting, and integrating the shadow, you don't just overcome sabotage, you awaken the true self. You stop living under the weight of unconscious fears and begin to walk your path with presence, authenticity, and clarity. That is the journey Jung invited us to walk, a return to wholeness, where every part of us, even the most hidden, has a place in the light. Jung believed that many of our internal struggles stem from external expectations that don't align with our inner truth. By working with the shadow, we can redefine what success truly means according to our own values and desires. Another essential step is cultivating presence. The shadow largely operates from the past, traumas, fears, and learned patterns, and projects these elements into the future. Through conscious presence, we break this cycle and reclaim the power of the present moment. Overcoming self-sabotage is neither quick nor easy, but it's one of the most transformative acts a person can undertake. When you engage with your shadow, you don't just free yourself from limiting patterns, you also access a more authentic and powerful version of who you are. Jung left us with an invaluable guide for this journey. His teachings about the shadow remind us that we are neither entirely good nor entirely bad. We are whole beings who must embrace every part of ourselves to live fully. If something you've heard here resonates with you, it's because you're ready to begin this path. The shadow is not your enemy. It's your ally in the process of self-discovery. As Jung once said, a life not lived is a disease from which one can die. Don't let self-sabotage steal your chance to truly live. Now that you hold the key to transforming your relationship with yourself, what steps will you take to integrate your shadow? Leave a comment and share this message with someone who might need to hear it. Remember, transformation starts with you, but its impact reaches far beyond. The path of integrating the shadow is not a one-time event. It's a continuous process that demands commitment and daily self-exploration. In this section, we'll explore specific practices you can incorporate into your life to remain connected with your shadow and effectively overcome self-sabotage. First, conscious observation of your thoughts and emotions. One of the most direct ways to work with the shadow is to observe your thoughts and emotions without judgment. The key here is curiosity, not criticism. Every emotion that arises, even the ones we label as negative, is a window into our shadow. Practice sitting in silence for 5 minutes each day, simply observing your thoughts. Ask yourself, what thoughts make me uncomfortable or hard to accept? What emotions do I tend to avoid or suppress? How might these emotions be linked to something unresolved within me? It can be helpful to keep a journal to record these observations, as writing allows you to identify patterns and deepen your self-understanding. Second, engaging in internal dialogue with the shadow. Jung encouraged establishing an inner conversation with the repressed aspects of our personality. It may sound strange at first, but this is a powerful way to integrate the shadow. The idea is to treat it as a part of yourself that needs to be heard. not rejected. Practice by closing your eyes, taking deep breaths, and visualizing your shadow as a figure or energy in front of you. Ask it, what do you need from me? What are you trying to protect or express? How can I integrate you in a positive way into my life? Write down any responses that come up without judging them. You'll often discover that the shadow is not an enemy, but a part of you that longs to be understood. Third, identifying patterns of self-sabotage. Self-sabotage can manifest in many ways: procrastination, fear of success, difficult relationships, or constant self-criticism. Identifying these patterns is the first step to disarming them. Practice by listing situations where you feel you're sabotaging yourself. For each one, ask, what underlying fear might be driving this behavior? What do I gain from maintaining this pattern, even if it seems negative? What could I do differently next time? This will help you recognize how your shadow is influencing your actions and empower you to make more conscious choices. Fourth, using creativity as a channel of expression. Creativity is a powerful tool for exploring and releasing the energy of the shadow. Jung believed that art, writing, music, and other forms of creative expression can reveal aspects of our psyche that aren't accessible through rational thought. Practice dedicating time to a creative activity without worrying about the result. It might be drawing, writing poetry, playing an instrument, or anything else that draws your interest. While creating, pay attention to the themes or emotions that arise. Ask yourself, what is this piece showing me about myself? What aspects of my shadow are being expressed here? You don't need to be a professional artist. What matters is allowing yourself to explore freely, without judgment. Fifth, recognizing external triggers. Triggers are situations or people that provoke intense emotional reactions in us. These moments are opportunities to work with the shadow, as they often reflect something repressed within. Practice by pausing the next time you feel a strong emotional response to someone or something. Reflect. What is causing this reaction? What part of me might be reflected in this situation? How can I respond in a way that honors my integration process? When you approach triggers with curiosity rather than reactivity, you begin to dismantle the unconscious patterns that fuel self-sabotage. Sixth, embracing imperfection. A major part of self-sabotage stems from unrealistic expectations we hold about ourselves. Jung believed that accepting our imperfect nature is essential to individuation. The shadow won't disappear entirely, but we can learn to live in harmony with it. Practice by listing what you consider your flaws and reflect on how they might serve a positive purpose in your life. For instance, if you think you're too sensitive, consider how that sensitivity allows you to deeply connect with others. If you view yourself as impulsive, think about how that trait has led you to take brave actions in the past. Accepting your imperfections doesn't mean resigning to them. It means recognizing that they are part of your humanity and can become strengths when embraced consciously. Seventh, practicing self-forgiveness. Self-sabotage is often tied to negative inner dialogue and a lack of compassion toward oneself. Learning to forgive yourself for your mistakes and limitations is a vital step in overcoming these patterns. Practice by reflecting each night before bed and asking yourself, what did I do well today? What could I have done differently? How can I be kinder to myself tomorrow? Speaking to yourself with compassion rather than criticism creates an inner space where the shadow can be accepted and integrated. By working with the shadow, we don't just overcome self-sabotage. We also build a life that's more authentic, balanced, and fulfilling. This process requires time, patience, and courage, but the rewards are profound. Carl Jung reminded us of a profound truth. The shadow is not our enemy. It is not a force we must eliminate or fight against. Rather, it is a vital and intrinsic part of who we are, a fragment of the psyche that longs to be seen, acknowledged, and ultimately integrated. To reject the shadow is to reject a part of ourselves. But when we choose to face it, when we dare to look into that hidden, often uncomfortable territory within, we begin to break free from the destructive patterns that have silently governed our lives. These patterns might manifest as self-doubt, emotional reactivity, fear of intimacy, or cycles of self-sabotage that keep us from achieving our fullest potential. And while they may feel like external obstacles, many of them are rooted in the unacknowledged parts of our own inner world. Integrating the shadow doesn't mean becoming perfect. It means becoming whole. It means daring to witness ourselves without judgment, to embrace not just our strengths and light, but also our wounds, fears, and contradictions. The journey of healing and transformation begins with this radical act of self-honesty. It is not a destination to be reached overnight, but a lifelong unfolding, a continuous process of self-awareness, self-compassion, and courageous reflection. Each time we choose to meet our shadow with curiosity rather than resistance, we reclaim a part of our personal power. We begin to see that what once felt like weakness or shame was, in fact, a doorway to something deeper, something profoundly human. In doing so, we open ourselves to a new kind of connection, not just with ourselves, but with others. We begin to relate from a place of authenticity, not performance. We stop projecting our pain onto those around us, and instead take ownership of our emotional reality. This is where true inner freedom begins. Overcoming self-sabotage is not about fixing yourself, because you are not broken. It's about remembering who you are, beneath the layers of conditioning, defense mechanisms, and fear. It's about coming home to your true nature and allowing all parts of you, both light and shadow, to coexist in harmony. Integrating the shadow is an act of courage. It requires facing discomfort. It requires sitting in silence with the parts of ourselves we've avoided for years. But in that silence, something miraculous begins to happen. We stop running. We start listening. And in listening, we begin to understand. We begin to forgive. We begin to heal. If this message resonates with you, know this: you are not alone. Everyone carries a shadow. Every soul walking this earth has faced inner battles, hidden fears, and moments of despair. And yet within each of us lies the power to transform. Not by denying what we feel, but by embracing it, by witnessing it, and by allowing it to guide us toward greater awareness. Take the first step by exploring your own inner landscape. What are the stories you keep repeating to yourself? What emotions do you fear the most? What parts of you have you rejected, disowned, or silenced? These questions are not easy, but they are essential. Because as Jung so wisely said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. True transformation does not happen by pretending the darkness isn't there. It happens when we choose to bring light to it. It happens when we choose to stay with the discomfort instead of numbing it. It happens when we accept that healing is not linear and growth is not always comfortable, but both are always possible. So if you're ready to begin, start with compassion. Be gentle with yourself. Your shadow is not something to be fixed. It is something to be understood. And once you understand it, you can begin to integrate it. And once you integrate it, you unlock a depth of personal power and clarity that no external validation could ever provide. Remember, the shadow doesn't diminish your light. It gives it contrast. It gives it depth. And ultimately, it makes it real. If you've come this far, perhaps something within you is already awakening. Share this message with someone who is ready to begin their own inner journey. And in the comments, I invite you to reflect. What practices or realizations have helped you face your own shadow or break free from self-sabotage? Never forget, real change begins the moment we stop resisting and start accepting. Because, as Jung said, what you resist not only persists, it grows stronger, but what you accept transforms you. Have you ever felt like you're constantly giving explanations no one asked for? As if every step you take, every choice you make, every quiet moment you embrace needs to be justified, as if simply existing requires a reason. It's exhausting, isn't it? Maybe you've caught yourself explaining why you're tired, why you didn't want to go out, why you chose to take care of yourself, as if choosing yourself was somehow a betrayal, a sin you must account for. And without even realizing it, you begin to ask for permission to exist. You carry this invisible burden, constantly explaining yourself as if you owe the world an apology for being who you are. It's like walking around with a heavy backpack full of silent regrets. I'm sorry I didn't fit in. I'm sorry I wasn't enough. The more you speak, the further you drift from yourself. We live in a world that teaches us from an early age to please, to adapt, to mold ourselves so we don't make others uncomfortable. So we become masters of justification. We learn to turn our feelings into arguments, into defensive speeches, because somewhere along the way, we were made to believe that our emotions must be validated by others before they can be real. But eventually, something deep inside you whispers, enough. Enough of translating yourself so others can understand. Enough of begging for acceptance, disguised as explanation. Sometimes silence is not surrender. Sometimes it's the first act of self-respect. Because silence can also be a boundary, a firm, quiet line that says, I no longer need to convince you of my truth. What if true self-love begins at the very moment you stop explaining yourself? Have you ever stopped to ask where this compulsive need to explain everything comes from? It's not just a habit, it's a wound. There is something ancient within you, something that fears being misunderstood. Maybe it goes back to your childhood, to that moment when you learned that if you didn't explain yourself well enough, you'd be rejected, or worse, abandoned. So you started overanalyzing every word, every action, monitoring your own behavior as if you were walking on a minefield, where one wrong step could mean emotional exile. This is emotional memory echoing through your soul. Don't say that. What will people think? Be quiet. That's not appropriate. If you act like that, no one will love you. And those words planted a seed inside you, a seed of doubt, a doubt that whispers, maybe I'm not enough as I am. That seed grows into a creeping vine, wrapping around your voice, suffocating your authenticity, dulling your peace. And without realizing it, you begin to live like you constantly need to prove you deserve to be here. But it's not your fault. This is what you learned in order to survive. In a world that often punishes vulnerability and glorifies the mask. Still, every mask tightens over time. Eventually, you can't breathe beneath it anymore. Because living to be understood is a slow death in the silence of your own soul. You have the right to be yourself, even if no one understands you. You have the right to feel, without giving explanations. You have the right to exist, even if your story can't be explained in neat, tidy words. And what if the fear of being misunderstood is just a reflection of a childhood where no one truly took the time to understand you? We tend to believe that speaking is a way to set ourselves free, but sometimes speaking too much becomes a prison made of invisible bars. When you feel the need to explain every no, every decision that breaks expectations, every instinct that deviates from the mold, your voice is no longer an expression. It becomes a defense, a shield, a wall, a silent plea to be accepted. And little by little, without even noticing, you stop speaking to express yourself and start speaking to protect yourself. You speak from fear, from guilt, from that old belief that if you don't explain every little thing, you'll lose someone's love. And that kind of speaking, it drains you. It tires your soul, weighs on your chest, dims the light in your eyes. Explaining everything all the time is like standing trial every day, where you play the accused, the lawyer, and the judge. You punish yourself for feeling what you feel, and then you struggle to make it all sound acceptable. And still, sometimes they don't believe you, they don't understand you, they don't hear you. Has that ever happened to you? Speaking out of fear is like trying to stop a storm with your bare hands. The words become fragile, nervous, stripped of truth, and your heart, despite all its efforts, remains alone. Your soul knows when you speak from love and when you speak from fear of not being enough. And deep down, you know it too. You feel that difference in your throat, in your stomach, in your chest. And there, in that awareness, a painful but freeing truth emerges. No matter how much you explain, those who don't want to understand you never will. Not because of who you are now, but because they never tried to see you from the beginning. And maybe, just maybe, it's time. Time to stop speaking just to convince and start embracing silence to begin healing. There's a moment in life, a quiet, raw, but beautiful moment, when you realize that silence isn't emptiness, it's shelter, a place without words where finally you can hear yourself again. And no, I'm not talking about the uncomfortable silence, the kind that feels like punishment. I'm speaking about a kind of silence that embraces you, not the absence of sound, but the sacred presence that arrives after countless internal battles. It's not the kind of silence that screams in your chest or pleads to be broken. Number this silence doesn't demand explanations. It doesn't ask for anything in return. It simply is. It exists alongside you, like a gentle witness to everything you've carried within. And in its presence, you feel, maybe for the first time, what it means to be completely seen without judgment. This silence does not question your pain. It doesn't interrogate your sadness, your fears, or your moments of uncertainty. It doesn't try to fix you or mold you into something more convenient, more acceptable. It doesn't ask you to be okay. Instead, it meets you exactly where you are. It says, you don't have to explain why you feel this way. Just rest. And it is in this silence, listen carefully now, that your soul finally finds a place to breathe, to exhale, without fear of being misunderstood. Because speaking can be exhausting, especially when your words are shaped by wounds, when your voice trembles under the weight of what you've endured. But silence, when chosen consciously, not imposed, becomes a form of healing. It becomes medicine, not the kind that numbs the pain, but the kind that brings you back to yourself. In that sacred space where you no longer feel the need to justify your existence, something incredible begins to happen. You start to reclaim your voice, not the one you use to speak to the world, but the quiet one within that has always guided you. The voice of your truth, your intuition, your essence. And in that moment, something begins to soften. The sharpness of the pain dulls. The fire of resentment transforms into a quiet flame of awareness. The need for external validation fades away, and in its place, you find something far more powerful: the permission to simply be. To be silent is not to run away. To be silent is not to surrender. To be silent, in its truest form, is to return home, to yourself. It's to look within and say, without a single word, I believe you. I see you. I choose you. Because not everything has to be understood. Not everything has to be explained. There are feelings that are meant to be felt, not translated. There are moments when your silence is not avoidance. It's protection. And there are people in your life who may never deserve the explanation you keep trying to offer them. So close your eyes, take a deep breath, and allow yourself to listen, truly listen, without needing to speak. Perhaps in that stillness, your real journey back home begins. Home, not as a place, but as a state of being where you no longer abandon yourself for the sake of others. When was the last time you truly chose yourself, without guilt? Do you even remember? Or has it become so normal to put yourself last, waiting for someone else to validate your worth, that you've forgotten what it feels like to be your own priority? Choosing yourself is not selfishness. It is emotional survival. It's an act of radical self-respect. It's standing in front of the mirror and saying, no more. No more depletion. No more over-explaining. No more trying to convince others that I am worthy of love, rest, or understanding. But I know, I really do, that the day you decide to place yourself first, something inside you shakes, because you were taught to please others, to yield, to smile even when you're breaking, to sacrifice yourself for the comfort of everyone around you. And when you finally say no, without any justification, the world shifts. The masks fall. Some people walk away. Others get angry. Why? Because you're no longer the version of yourself they constructed to meet their needs. And yes, it hurts. It stings to be misunderstood, to be left behind by those who once claimed to care. But you know what? It's real. It's liberation. It's rebirth. Choosing yourself is an act of courage, because when you do, you are also saying goodbye to the version of you who waited endlessly to be chosen by others. You are burying the compulsion to explain your wounds, your pauses, your path. And yes, it's terrifying, because choosing yourself might mean standing alone for a while. But let me tell you something from the depths of my own experience. The solitude that comes from choosing yourself is not a punishment. It is a cleansing. It is sacred space to heal, to reconstruct your identity, to remember that your value is not up for negotiation, not determined by what others accept or fail to understand. There is a quiet power in saying, today, I don't need to explain myself. Today, I just need to honor myself. And even if no one sees that moment, even if the world doesn't clap for you, it will remain one of the holiest decisions you've ever made. But let's not pretend it's easy. Many of us spent years silent out of fear, not choice. That's a different kind of silence. A silence that doesn't heal. It suffocates. A silence that wraps around your throat like a knot because you've convinced yourself that speaking up will only bring more pain. And yes, sometimes talking hurts, but staying silent, when that silence is rooted in fear, can be even more damaging. Have you felt it? That choking silence where you swallow your truth to avoid conflict, where you bury your feelings just so you don't make anyone uncomfortable. That kind of silence is like swallowing glass, invisible, but sharp enough to break you from within. And worst of all, with time, you get used to it. You become skilled at smiling when you want to scream. You say, "I'm fine," when everything in you is trembling. You learn to fake calm while chaos rages beneath your skin. But silence born from fear is not peace. It is a quiet war, one where the battlefield is your own body, your own mind, your own heart. And that internal war, day after day, drains your spirit. It steals your glow. It convinces you that you don't have the right to exist fully, to take up space, to be heard. Eventually, you lose the ability to identify what you feel, because you've silenced yourself for so long that you no longer recognize the map of your emotions. So what's the difference between the silence that heals and the silence that destroys? One word: intention. The healing silence comes from choosing yourself. The destructive silence comes from fearing the loss of someone else. One whispers, "Today, I will care for myself." The other murmurs, "I'm not worthy of being heard." But you are. You are worthy. Worthy of spaces where your voice doesn't need to defend itself, where it simply gets to exist. You deserve relationships where silence is a moment of peace, not a prison. And if you haven't found those spaces yet, be that space. Be the one who listens to your own soul. Be the one who allows your heart to speak, and also to rest in silence, when that is the truest expression of self-love. One day, and you won't know exactly when or how, but one day, something inside you will quietly break, not in anger, not in sadness, but in a strange, sacred stillness. A calm knowing will rise in you, and that day, without a big announcement, without drama, you will simply say, "Enough," and that day will change you forever, because you will finally realize that you no longer owe anyone an explanation, not because you feel superior, but because you now understand. Anyone who truly loves you, anyone who truly sees you, doesn't need you to justify your existence. It will be a quiet day, a holy day, a day where you choose not to answer certain questions, where you stop giving reasons for your fatigue, your distance, your boundaries, where you stop translating your soul so others can understand its language. Because constantly explaining yourself is a form of begging for permission. Permission to feel, to choose, to be. But no one else holds that power. They never did. Only you can grant yourself that freedom. To stop explaining doesn't mean to close yourself off. It means to open yourself more fully to your truth, to your intuition, to the wisdom within that knows some choices are not made with logic, but with the heart. Because the decisions that come from the soul may not always be rational, but they are always real. And the truth, when it's real, never needs a justification. So, you realize that silence isn't emptiness, it's wholeness. It's telling the world, "I no longer live to be understood. I live to simply be." And from that place, you begin to attract people who don't over-explain themselves either, because they just feel you, they resonate with you, they honor your energy. And that is freedom. Some wounds don't bleed, but they speak. They speak without asking permission. They speak even when you wish they'd stay quiet. Sometimes it's old pain that pushes you to explain too much, to justify every action, every emotion, every absence, as if through words you could stop the pain from returning. But it's not your voice that needs to be heard. It's your wound. Do you remember that time you said, "This hurts," and they told you you were overreacting? When you asked for love and they called you needy? From that moment, your soul learned that in order to be heard, it had to explain itself. And you started repeating yourself over and over again, hoping that this time someone would understand, that this time someone would stay. The truth is, you never wanted to talk so much. You just wish someone would say, even once, "You don't need to explain. I see you." You wanted to feel safe being who you are. You longed to be accepted without needing a mask. That's why you spoke so much, not for attention, but out of fear of being abandoned. Each word was a silent plea. Can you see me now? Do you understand me now? Are you going to leave me again? But there's a truth that even though it hurts, sets you free. The person who doesn't want to see you won't, no matter how loud you scream. And the one who does want to see you doesn't need you to say a thing, because soul recognizes soul, and that doesn't need to be explained, it's simply felt. So take a deep breath, turn inward, and speak only when your heart decides, not when the wound demands. Because you are not your explanations, you are the truth that lives behind them. There's a kind of exhaustion that sleep can't cure. It's a soul-deep weariness, not from your body, but from years spent explaining yourself, defending yourself, trying to be understood by people who never truly wanted to listen. Have you ever felt that? Speaking from the heart, and all you get is silence, sharing your wounds with someone who only responds with judgment or apathy, hoping for an empathetic glance, but getting criticism instead. That hurts. But what hurts more isn't the cold reaction. It's the echo of your soul, feeling invisible all over again. And so little by little, something inside you starts to fade. You stop talking like before. You stop sharing with the same light in your voice. Not because you have nothing to say, but because you finally understood. Some places are not meant for your truth. The soul gets tired when it's ignored, when its voice becomes noise to others, when its emotions are dismissed, mocked, rejected. And that's when many of us learn to stay silent, not out of choice, but for protection. Because sometimes it hurts less to stay quiet than to feel again the wound of not being heard. But that's not healing. That's hiding your pain beneath the rug of your soul. And sooner or later, that rug gets lifted. That's why today, I invite you to pause, not to explain yourself, but to hold yourself. Close your eyes and ask, where did I exhaust myself from talking too much? When did my soul go unheard? And what do I need now to begin truly listening to myself? Because when you listen with love, when you stop demanding explanations from yourself, that's when real healing begins. We live in a world that demands smiles, a world uncomfortable with raw pain, a world that wants you to say, "I'm fine," even if you're falling apart inside. And little by little, you learn to justify your sadness, to explain why you're not okay, to offer valid reasons, hoping people won't walk away when they see your tears, as if feeling deeply was a flaw, as if your pain needed a signed approval to be real. But no, pain doesn't need to be explained. Pain deserves to be honored. You don't need to justify your tears. You don't owe anyone an explanation for your sorrow. You're not required to dress up what's breaking inside you with pretty words. Because pain isn't looking for approval. It's looking for presence. It needs space to breathe. It needs your arms, not your arguments. And you know what's the saddest part? That pain often grows. not because of what it feels like, but because of how often you feel forced to justify it. I'm just tired, you say. I've had a rough week. Sorry, it's just stress. Lies dressed as explanations. To avoid discomfort, to stay accepted, to not be seen as weak, dramatic, or negative. But feeling doesn't make you weak. Denying what you feel, that's what breaks you. So today, let yourself feel. Without guilt, without explaining, without covering it up. Your pain doesn't need logical proof to be valid. Your soul already knows, and all it's asking of you is to stop fighting with what you feel. Make silence your temple, and within that temple, let your pain speak, free of judgment. Here begins true emotional freedom. There's a silent belief that lives in many wounded hearts. The idea that if you open your soul completely, you'll be more loved, and so you share everything. You undress emotionally, confess your most intimate wounds, hoping that someone, upon seeing your raw sincerity, will hold you tighter. But it doesn't always happen that way. Not everyone is ready to hold your truth. Not everyone has the sensitivity to receive what you've kept quiet for years, and most painfully, not everyone deserves it. Your truth is sacred. It's not a speech to persuade, not a product to be approved. Your truth is a fire. It can illuminate or it can burn. It all depends on where you place it. And many times, in the name of love or the desire for closeness, you gave yourself completely to people who lacked the ability or the intention to truly understand you. People who turned your vulnerability into judgment, who used your confessions as weapons, who saw your sincerity as weakness. So you shut down. You promised never to open up again. But that's not fair to you. The mistake wasn't trusting. The mistake wasn't speaking. The pain came from not recognizing who did and who didn't deserve that sacred part of you. Learning to choose who gets to hear your truth is an act of self-love. It's saying, my story isn't for just anyone. It's for those who know how to honor it. Because there are those who only want to know you to control you. And there are those who listen to protect you. The difference lies in their presence, their energy, their intention. Not everyone deserves your silence, and not everyone deserves your voice. Both are gifts. So don't blame yourself for having revealed yourself. But from now on, open up only where your soul feels safe. Sometimes, talking too much becomes a form of forgetting, an elegant distraction, an ancient strategy to avoid feeling what truly lives inside you. Because while you talk, analyze, justify, explain, you drift away from yourself. You dissolve into the other person. You get lost in the maze of what others expect from you. But when you choose silence, not the kind that's imposed, but the sacred kind, something inside you aligns. The pieces begin to fall into place. Chaos finds a center. Silence, at this level, is not hiding. It's returning. It's allowing yourself to hear what the noise of the world had drowned out. That soft, persistent, authentic voice. The voice of your soul. That's when you realize you have nothing to prove. You're not here to please or to fit in. You came to remember who you are, not to explain yourself. In that silence, external judgments dissolve. The need to be understood fades, and in its place, certainty arises. You don't need to be understood to have value, because your worth doesn't lie in how well you can explain your pain, but in how deeply you dare to dwell in it. Silence then becomes a medicine, a way to reconnect, a mirror where you finally recognize yourself, without ornaments, without scripts, without defenses, and you begin to see that everything you were looking for on the outside was waiting quietly, patiently, lovingly, within. silent, still, present. You remain quiet to remember, quiet to return, quiet to heal. Because sometimes the road back to yourself begins with one simple, powerful silence. There's a quiet moment, almost imperceptible, when something inside you changes. There are no screams, no drama, just an inner decision. Firm, calm, final. I won't beg anymore. And it's not pride, it's not coldness, it's dignity waking up. It's self-love finally rising from the ground where it knelt for so long. Because yes, you did beg. You begged with explanations. You begged with apologies you didn't owe. You begged with sweet words that masked pain. You begged through anxious silences, hoping the other person would notice your absence. And that begging wasn't always obvious. Sometimes it disguised itself as patience or excessive understanding or pretending everything was fine. But your soul remembers it all. It remembers how you dimmed your light so as not to bother, how you got lost just to be loved, how you explained yourself over and over again, hoping to be enough. Until one day, you choose yourself, not out of anger, but out of love. A love so deep, so true, that it no longer allows you to keep giving away your pieces to those who don't honor them. Because the soul that chooses itself stops begging, stops explaining, stops waiting. It begins to walk. It walks without resentment, but with memory. It walks without revenge, but with boundaries. It walks with the heart in hand, not to offer it, but to finally hold it. And in that step, everything changes, not outside, but inside of you. Silence becomes your companion. Solitude becomes your home, and you finally become your own safe place. To convince, what a heavy word when it's born out of fear. Convincing someone that you're enough, that you're worth staying for, that your feelings aren't too much, that your wounds aren't a burden. It's a dance that drains you, a conversation that echoes endlessly in your chest. What if I explain it better? What if this time they understand me? What if I change a little, just so they won't leave? But you don't see that every time you do. You're betraying yourself, piece by piece. You let go of your essence, just to fit in. You reshape your love to make it acceptable. You soften your truths so they won't disturb. And what ends up hurting the most isn't even the rejection. It's everything you had to stop being to avoid it. Until one day, you've had enough. Not of them, but of yourself. Of looking at your reflection and not recognizing who you've become. Of realizing that trying to convince someone is a golden prison, shiny on the outside, suffocating within. That day, your soul makes a promise. Never again. No more begging to be understood by someone who chooses not to see you. No more translating yourself. No more performing to be loved. That day, words shrink. You only say what truly matters, what rises from your core. And if they don't understand, that's okay, because your truth isn't up for debate. It's meant to be lived. Whoever has a soul will feel it. So lower your voice, not out of fear, but like someone guarding a treasure. Your truth doesn't need volume, only direction. There is no act more intimate or more powerful than the moment you decide to go quiet. And in that silence, you choose yourself. You don't stay quiet out of surrender, but out of self-respect. You're not silent because you fear the response, but because you finally love yourself enough to stop chasing it. Because you now know that some battles are not won through words, but through letting go. Silence can also say, I owe you nothing. I don't need your approval to exist. What I know about myself is enough. And that is an inner revolution. For years, they taught you that your worth depended on being understood. on being clear, on being coherent for others. But no one ever told you that your worth also lives in your silence, that your voice remains alive even when you don't speak, that you are still whole even when you don't explain yourself. In that silence, something new begins, a reunion, a rebirth, a reconciliation with yourself. You stop trying to persuade, you stop needing to please, you simply crave peace. And peace doesn't shout, peace doesn't argue. Peace settles in when you no longer bargain with your truth. So yes, silence is an act of love, of power, of maturity. Silence to avoid betraying yourself. Silence to break the cycle. Silence because sometimes silence isn't surrender, it's self-choosing. And in that sacred instant, true healing begins. Tell me, how many times have you broken just to be understood? How many times have you drowned in explanations no one asked for, just to avoid feeling unwanted? How many times have you muted your own essence, thinking that would make them love you more? And now that you've made it this far, you begin to see just how much strength lives in your silence. How beautiful it is to not have to explain who you are. Maybe healing doesn't happen when you finally say everything. Maybe it happens when you no longer feel the need to say anything at all. Maybe the soul doesn't crave words, it craves presence. It wants you to stay, to hold yourself fully, to choose you, even if no one else does. This video was a space to remind you of something incredibly important. You are not defined by your explanations. You don't need to convince anyone to deserve love. And sometimes, choosing to stay silent is the deepest act of self-love you can offer yourself. So now, I invite you to share in the comments the moment in your life when you first felt like you had to explain yourself all the time. Reflect on what might happen if today you decided to embrace silence, and in that silence, reconnect with yourself. If this message touched something deep within your soul, I ask you from the bottom of my heart to support this channel with a big like. That small gesture helps us continue creating these spaces of depth and healing for thousands of people just like you. Don't forget to subscribe and activate the notification bell so you never miss the next video that will appear right here on your screen. That next video will be another step on your journey back home. Because, as Carl Jung said, what you resist persists, what you accept transforms, and you are already ready to transform.